What happens when a powerful HOA tries to secretly steal land from a hardworking black farmer, but underestimates his wit, grit, and determination? This story of betrayal, revenge, and clever justice will keep you hooked until the last word. Don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping real-life inspired stories that expose corruption and celebrate the power of resilience. Once upon a time, in the outskirts of a fast-developing suburban town where money-hungry developers were swallowing every patch of land they could find, there lived a quiet but determined black farmer named Elijah Carter, a man who had inherited his family's farm through generations of hard work, sweat, and endless sacrifice, and though the world around him was rapidly modernizing with shopping centers, condos, and gated neighborhoods ruled by homeowner associations, Elijah remained deeply connected to the soil beneath his boots, the fields of corn and beans stretching as far as the eye could see, and the old red barn that still stood proudly as a symbol of resilience. But little did Elijah know that his farm would soon become the center of a ruthless plot orchestrated by a powerful HOA board, a group of people so blinded by greed that they decided to take what wasn't theirs by digging a secret tunnel under his land to connect their water and sewage system for a massive new development. And when Elijah first noticed odd vibrations in his fields at night and cracks forming along the edges of his irrigation ditches, he grew suspicious, setting out with his flashlight and loyal dog Jasper to investigate, only to stumble upon faint sounds of drilling beneath the soil, a discovery that made his blood boil because it was no accident, no natural occurrence, but rather a deliberate act of trespass. Yet Elijah didn't immediately confront them. Instead, he smiled quietly to himself, because unlike the board members who thought he was just a simple farmer, Elijah was far more cunning and educated than they could imagine, having studied engineering before choosing to return to the land his ancestors built, and now he had every tool in his mind to turn their arrogance against them. So while the HOA's president, a smug man named Gregory Whitfield, continued to boast at town hall meetings about the luxury homes that would elevate the community's value, Elijah began gathering evidence, secretly installing ground-penetrating radar sensors, cameras disguised as fence posts, and even placing markers in the soil to track the tunneling progress, carefully documenting every inch they stole, every violation of property lines, and every environmental hazard they ignored, all while pretending to be indifferent, showing up at local stores with his straw hat and calm demeanor as though nothing was wrong. But deep inside he was weaving a master plan of revenge, and the more he learned, the more unbelievable it became, because not only were they tunneling illegally, they were also rerouting wastewater straight through the underground system under his farm, threatening his crops, his water supply, and potentially his livelihood, which made Elijah's mission crystal clear. He wouldn't just stop them, he would ruin them. So he began leaking subtle hints at town gatherings, asking innocent questions about underground infrastructure, and watching as Gregory's face stiffened, confirming his guilt. And then he quietly partnered with an environmental lawyer, a sharp woman named Camille Johnson, who had been waiting years to expose the HOA's illegal backdoor dealings, and together they crafted a brilliant trap. But Elijah wasn't ready to spring it just yet, because patience was his greatest weapon, so he let them dig deeper, watching the tunnel snake longer and longer until it reached the heart of his farm. And that's when Elijah struck with his first twist. He secretly rerouted part of his irrigation system to flood the tunnel one night after a storm, not enough to cause damage to himself, but enough to cause chaos for the construction crews who had no idea why their equipment was sinking into muddy pits, their pumps failing, and their workers complaining of foul-smelling water rising unexpectedly. And while Gregory screamed at contractors to fix the unexpected water problem, Elijah calmly documented every inch of it, then tipped off a local reporter about suspicious construction issues near farmland, planting seeds of a story that would later explode. But the real blow came when Elijah gathered the community of longtime locals who had been bullied by the HOA into selling their homes for pennies, and he revealed to them his evidence of the tunnel, showing photographs, soil scans, and even jars of contaminated water, igniting outrage among the townsfolk who were tired of being steamrolled by developers. And soon whispers turned into a chorus of resistance. But Gregory still thought his money and connections could bury Elijah, threatening him with lawsuits and calling him an uneducated farmer who didn't understand progress. But Elijah just smiled, because the bigger the HOA's arrogance grew, the harder they would fall. So he waited until the developers poured millions into the project, until the tunnel was fully operational, until investors were locked in with no exit, and then, like a chess master revealing checkmate, he unleashed the full weight of his evidence. not only in court filings with Camille but also in a dramatic press conference where he played footage of workers illegally digging under his land, backed by environmental reports showing how the HOA's sewage lines risked contaminating groundwater for the entire town, and the effect was nuclear, the community exploding in fury, investors pulling out overnight, lawsuits flying in every direction, and government inspectors swarming the site to shut it all down. But Elijah wasn't done yet, because he had one final card to play. He revealed that before the wall even began digging, he had quietly filed a conservation easement on part of his land, protecting it as historical farmland tied to his family's legacy, which meant the developers hadn't just trespassed, they had violated federal protections, guaranteeing not only the collapse of their project but also hefty fines and possible jail time. And as Gregory was led out of a county hearing in handcuffs, shouting about conspiracies and betrayal, Elijah simply stood tall, shaking the hands of neighbors who once doubted him, smiling not out of arrogance but out of pride that his ancestors' land had been defended with intelligence, patience, and unshakable will. And though developers tried for years to recover, their reputation was ruined, their finances drained, and the wall itself dissolved under legal pressure, while Elijah's farm thrived, not just as a place of crops but as a community landmark, where locals gathered to celebrate resilience and justice, and visitors from afar came to learn how one man's determination could outwit an empire of greed. And Elijah would often tell them with a grin that the land speaks to those who listen, that patience is stronger than power, and that no one, no matter how rich or arrogant, can steal what generations built with love, faith, and unbreakable roots.